their cry for help wasn't acknowledged. We received the message that there are no unsolvable problems because feasible solutions already exist, a statement I do not agree with. Today, an unproblematic, even harmonic coexistence in our cultural landscape is an illusion. For the European countryside, the return of the large carnivores is personal. It's about the countryside's trust in the European institutions and in the EU itself. And this is really a hard thing to say, but in parts of Europe, this trust is crumbling. As I identify as a true European, I want to see no more of this. I wish that we would find a way to find solutions to this long, silent conflict. Last year, as European Parliament, we took a huge step forward to address this conflict. The majority in the European Parliament supports a clear call towards the European Commission. The conservation status of the wolves must be checked thoroughly. If wolves are no longer endangered, the strict protection needs to be adapted. Now, the European Commission will perform the request check in form of an in-depth analysis until the end of the year. And we are waiting, really waiting for the results. So today, we do another very important step forward together on this really long and rocky road towards conflict resolution, a possibility. We come together to welcome various views and discuss and try to find possible solutions for a common future, not more. So with further ado, I want to take the floor to our moderator, and I thank you all for being here. I would say, let the peace talks begin. Thank you so much.
All of a sudden I feel much more important now. Well, before we start on the peace talks, we still have 3 contributions, and the first one is coming from the European Parliament's Research Service. Later on we will have one of the European platform on large carnivores, and then we will discuss a special case from Castilla y León. But the first one is related to the state of play of national government measures on the protection of large carnivores, and that within the EU Habitats Directive. It will be Claudia Vinci from the European Parliament's research service who will give us an overview. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Claudia Vinci. I'm a veterinarian and I'm a policy analyst in the Structural Policy Unit of the European Parliament Research Service. On my agenda today, there will be some insight on the legal basis for the protection of large carnivores, and then I will talk about the state of play on implementation at national level, but also I would like to tackle some measures that are available to protect farmers, and then finally just some actions which have been taken during the years at the European Parliament level. So human activities in the last decades, like 150 years, have brought to a decline in the number of large carnivores, and this is why the Berne Convention was first introduced in 1982, which is an international instrument that was guaranteeing the protection of wild fauna and flora across the European continent, but also beyond. It was covering 50 countries overall, including some countries of the North Africa. But what we are mainly focusing here is the EU Habitats Directive, meaning the Council Directive 92/43, that was adopted and came into force in 1992, and it was then enlarged last time, it was amended last time in 2013 in order to accommodate, of course, the enlargement of the EU, and therefore taking into account also other territories with different fauna and flora to be protected. Talking about some of the main parts of the EU Habitats Directive, I just focused on, in my briefing, on few articles and few annexes, but I think it's good to underline here which are the main ones. So among those, I would like to still highlight even more the Article 12. That is the one that is describing what are the strict rules that the member states have to follow in order to protect large carnivores and in general the animal species which are listed in Annex 4 that we will see later. These strict measures include, for example, the prohibition of capture or killing of specimen, disturbance of species, destruction of nests and eggs, and so on. Article 16, we will also see it later with a bit more of details, is the derogation that member states can have on Article 12 and also other articles when there is no alternative, no viable alternative, and in case, of course, it is not detrimental for the population that has to be conserved in a favorable conservation status. Article 17 is the obligation for member states to report every 6 years to the Commission what is the state of play on the conservation of the animals which are protected by, covered by the EU Habitats Directive. And then the Article 19 is the article that gives you the chance to amend these annexes of the EU Habitats Directive. However, we will see that Annex 4 is the one that requires unanimity at the Council. Then we have the Annex 2, 4, and 5. Annex 4 is the one that is, let's say, the strict one, because it's the one that is describing the animal and plant species of community interest which are in need of a strict protection, while Annex 5 is the one that gives some chance, let's say, and where it is described where management measures can be taken. Here you will see a map that was also presented in my briefing. The source you can see underneath is the Large Carnivore Initiative for Europe and gives an overview of what is the distribution of the main 4 out of 5 large carnivores in the EU. The data that I will give you now are not divided by member state, but I have to divide, for sake of summary, into population, just to give you a little bit more the trend. So we have, according to 2016, these are the latest number I could find, we have around 17,000 wolves, 18,000 brown bears, 9,000 Eurasian lynx, and a little bit more than 1,000 wolverines that you can see is just in the Scandinavian countries. With regard to wolves, they are mainly listed in under Annex 4, and I say mainly because there are some communities which are listed in Annex 5, mainly in some area of Greece, Spain, and Finland. And the trend for this animal is generally increasing, with some stability, but in general the trend of this animal is going upwards. Regarding bears, they are there is no population listed in Annex 5, so they are all under strict measures for conservation, although there is a limited number of bears that can be culled in some member states. In this case, the trend is overall stable, with some population which are going stable to increase, and one is definitely decreasing. One population is definitely decreasing. Regarding lynx, Finland, Sweden and Latvia are applying the derogation under Article 16 to cull some of the animals. The population of lynx is actually giving a big variability in numbers, because 4 out of 11 population are showing a decrease in numbers, and 4 out of 11, so let's say we're already 8 out of 11 are stable. So the trend for lynxes are stable to decreasing. And regarding wolverines, we see that only 2 member states, EU member states, have this animal on their territory, and only Sweden is using a derogation to cull some of this animal, and the Finnish population has been seen to be slightly increasing. In this table that I summarized here, these are data which are extracted from a dashboard that is publicly available. When a member state is using the derogation under Article 16, they are obliged every 2 years to report for which species, for how long, and mainly what is the reason behind the request for a derogation. So you can see here all the different member states that are using the derogation. Of course, I highlighted here in bold the ones which are going, let's say, at the latest point possible. Of course, these data are available as from 2022. We have to wait for the next block of reports in order to have additional numbers. But you will see that these member states are using the derogation. But for example, you see that Belgium just made a request according to this table, according to dashboard, for example, for wolves until 2019. So there is, let's say, there is a deadline to what it is happening, while the others in bold are ongoing, or at least were ongoing when these reports were made available. Some measures to protect farmers. We can find preventive measures, which are the ones that are usually funded by the EU, and compensation measures instead are in the hand of national funds. So I made two divisions because we can see that the EU LIFE program and the European Regional Development Fund, they are mainly focusing on innovation, meaning that they are funding projects on exchange of information, on cooperation. But then there is the CAP funding, which are indeed available for purchasing livestock guarding dogs, or purchasing fencing, or giving training for shepherds, which are more and more difficult to find. In order to have, of course, access to this fund, in any case, the measure to manage coexistence have to be included in the strategic plan before the beneficiary can apply. Compensation measures are the ones which are instead available at member state level to receive funding after a damage has been done by a large carnivore. Here the link is, I didn't make it on purpose, to a Castilla Leon document, which was, I think, very well made. So you will find here the link for, it was not made on purpose, I swear. But this was just an example that I found for you to apply, and which are the details in order to apply. And finally, we have some of the action that have been taken at the European Parliament level, starting from a 2018 resolution, but then we move forward in 2021 and 2022 with informative sessions, other resolutions. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, sorry. But it's true that in the last few years there have been a lot of questions for written answer to the Commission, and studies that were provided both by the Petty Committee but also Agri Committee, and which are, of course, all of them publicly available on the European Parliament website. So this is my publication that you will find as well online. I hope you will find it interesting. I saw it was also in the document that was provided to you before the meeting. And I thank you for your time and for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Now, this is the moment that I'm changing hats from chair to from chairing this meeting to the EU platform, co-chair, I have to say, of the EU Large Carnivore Platform, and I have to say co-chair, as we are having the European Commission as the second co-chair. So that makes that, in reality, I'm doing most of the meetings, but let's say the Commission is systematically sitting with us when we are putting together the program. I do have a slide presentation. Excellent, thank you very much. Can I move this forward, or will you? Same for me. Yeah, okay, good, excellent, thank you. The platform was launched in 2014, so that's almost 10 years ago. So we are referring to a period, let's say, where the large carnivore problems were only starting. We saw growing populations, and let's say there was a feeling that we need to have a look on, okay, how can we make sure that those large carnivores are in a certain way interacting in a good way with the countryside population. The mission of the platform was to promote ways and means to minimize and wherever possible find solutions to conflicts between human interests and the presence of large carnivore species. We do that systematically by exchanging knowledge and by working together in an open-ended, constructive and always in a mutual, respectful way. We have been with the platform to many regions where we have actual problems with large carnivores. I have to say, sometimes you can work on a constructive dialogue between the local population and discuss how you can make the local population of large carnivores and their presence possible in a certain region. But I would say it's even written in the mission, wherever possible. So that also indicates that it's not always possible to come to a solution. The key principles that are agreed by all of the members, that is, we work systematically within an EU legal framework, so we do not start the meetings with questioning, do we need the habitat directives, do we need the birds directives? No, that framework is there, so we are working within that framework. Then we always ensure that we have the necessary knowledge, and that makes that we are inviting local researchers, experts, to make sure that we are aware about what we are discussing. We systematically recognize the importance of socio-economic and cultural considerations and concerns, because they're often, that's the first concern which is popping up. And then we try to find solutions to conflicts through a constructive dialogue. That makes that we are most often engaged in transboundary cooperation, because large carnivores are not aware that we have 27 EU member states in Europe. How do we do that? We share experience and expertise, and we listen and we discuss. I would say just as today, we are listening and we are discussing experiences and views. As I said, we do that in dialogue, and we are systematically open to accept examples of good practice, but we also acknowledge when, let's say, a good practice is not always working as it should be. We are willing to transfer and test examples of good practice, and we ensure capacity to fully engage in the work of the platform. As said, there are two co-chairs. That's on one side the European Landowners Organization, on the other side the European Commission. We have a number of other partners, FAS, of which we have a representative over here, which is the European Federation of Associations for Hunting and Conservation. The CIC is present, the joint representatives of Finnish and Swedish reindeer herders. We have a representative of IUCN, the World Conservation Union, WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. It's their European Policy Office who is representing them. And we have the Europark Federation. The European Commission is providing a secretariat which is taken on board by Adelphi and Callisto, two consultancy companies, and so they bring the platform activities forwards. What are those platform activities? A lot is related to communications with newsletters and website, traditional, but let's say we're also making statements, press releases, after doing a number of actions. We link with other projects, and we have established, let's say, quite a number of regional platforms: Italy, Romania, Spain, Germany, France, and Sweden. That are places where we went, where we had a discussion, and where we have a long-standing platform where the discussion is made on large carnivores. Next to that, we also have annual meetings. Those meetings we have in Brussels together with the European Commission, where we set up the working program of the platform on a yearly basis. We do background research, that is research on case studies. We gather information on and evaluating national and regional platforms. We do evaluate the funding for reducing conflict and supporting coexistence. And we are studying fear and risk with large carnivores, because that too is sometimes less easy to measure, but it's something which is really important and very visible if you're in the regions where the large carnivores are living. As said, we are making the link between the EU on one side and regional platforms on the other side. That makes we hold regular exchanges. Our last session was in Sweden, was organized in 2022. And there was a particular interest in multi-level platforms and communication between the local up to the EU level. That was very successful. I've just heard that, let's say, the Swedish regions platform met only a couple of weeks ago. As said, we do that systematically based on research. We do that making use of facilitators. If we are bringing people together and they have very different views, let's say a facilitator is a very important person, because we have to make sure that, let's say, even if those people have very different views, that they are able to speak to each other. We have constructed a toolkit. I'm not going to go into details. You can see the toolkit on the website of the platform, but it's a toolkit which we are providing to regional platforms to bring the discussion forward. I would like to thank you for your attention. This is what the platform is doing. As said, we have quite a number of different members. Let's say we do not always agree on every point discussed, but okay, that's exactly the reason why we have put together the platform. I'm changing my hat from the chair of the platform to the chair of this meeting, because as a last person, but certainly not the least one, we have Juan Carlos Suarez Quinones. He will give a presentation specifically on the Castilla y León case, where he's regional minister for the environment, housing and land planning. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. If you don't mind, I want to speak in Spanish en mi exposición. Muchas gracias. Lo primero, a las presidencias de las comisiones NAT y de la comisión
committees. And also thank you to the chair of the intergroup on biodiversity, hunting and rural development, and the countryside from the European Parliament. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. To give you a bit of backdrop, I represent a European region in Spain, which is the third largest region in Europe, with 95 million square kilometres, where we have significant problems with wolves and livestock. We have the same in a number of regions, particularly in the northwest of Spain, in Cantabria and Galicia. We have Paula Fernandez, who represents the region, and we have a common position. And this is a position where we don't have support from the Spanish government. The Spanish government has a position which is completely contrary to that which the regions in the northwest of Spain maintain. We fully endorse the position set out by Romania in the Agriculture Committee recently on the 26th and 27th of June. There, the Spanish government maintained a position which was critical to the Romanian position. However, we fully support Romania's position. And it was very gratifying to hear for these regions in Spain and for most European countries. Castilla y León and the northwest of Spain have 98% of wolves in Spain. My region has a lot more wolves than countries such as France, for example, about 2,000. And we have a lot of problems with the action from the Spanish government, which I want to set out and denounce here. We are fully in line with what Romania is doing and what the Parliament's resolution on the historic resolution from 2022, where they asked for action from the Member States and the European Union to carry out an in-depth study of the impact of the current situation of large carnivores in the EU. The Habitats Directive has existed for 30 years in the EU. Back then, the situation was completely different when it came to biodiversity and to the issues at stake. And so we fully agree with the resolution handed down by the European Parliament that we have to once again open up this topic, discuss it, and to monitor the situation of the various species. And the fact that the legal framework and the annexes have to be reviewed. The Spanish government's position was critical towards Romania in the most recent Agriculture Committee. Spain's position is that they have introduced a separate legislation on wolves. The EU wanted to create more flexibility, but the Spanish government merely it became less flexible in its position. Now, the Habitats Directive allowed flexibility when it came to these species. And there was an effective way of managing coexistence through regulated hunting that was controlled by the administrative authorities, and it was controlled in a technical manner, which for many years allowed us to maintain a level of conservation that was favourable to the wolf. We have about 400 wolves in the 80s, and now we have about 2,000. So it was the regions in Spain that were that actually did the most to conserve wolves in Spain. A new law was passed in Spain in the 2000s, which prevented us from maintaining wolves in the same manner and withdrew management capacity from the regions. The result of this decision has to be analysed in two different ways. On the one hand, it increased harm to livestock by 20% in 1 year. We've seen 5,000 deaths in 2022. People are giving up rural zones and livestock farming in Castilla y León. And we're seeing population drops when the Committee of the Regions know that depopulation is a problem in Spain and in these regions of Europe. People are leaving the area. It's not helping biodiversity. If humans aren't present, then that's not going to be good for biodiversity. It was people on these territories that have allowed this rich biodiversity to be maintained. People are now being pushed out of rural areas. We actually went to court. We took the Spanish government to court, not just us, the regions took the Spanish government to court because we are trying to get back to the European system. The Spanish law is much harsher. We agree with the European system, with Romania and with the other countries said that we have to be more flexible and to properly study the situation to see which measures should be taken. The situation is much worse in Spain. The situation is basically not viable. Article 26 of Habitats has now been made impossible. I'm a regional minister and I wanted to come here to set out the situation and denounce the situation in Spain. The 23rd of July, the coming 23rd of July, there'll be national elections in Spain. We're expecting to see a change in the government. The government, if it maintains, will stick to its position as it did in the Agriculture Committee last week. It's very clear what Madrid thinks about those living in rural areas. We want to go back to the situation that all of you support, which is to look at the European legislation and see whether that should be changed and how it should be changed. We're trying to fight the Spanish government and to prevent them from doing what they've been doing so far, which is to merely worsen the situation. The way in which the Spanish government is treating the regions is making the situation significantly worse. And we want to align with countries such as Romania to try to harmonise monitoring of the situation, work on compensation as part of the CAP, and to look into studies to see what we can do to make the monitoring measures more flexible and to come into line with the Habits Directive. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. As we are discussing the local level, I still had Mr. Borboli, who asked me to have the chance to have 2 additional minutes. Please.
Yes, because I was very shortly and very briefly in the introduction. I would like to emphasize one topic in 2 minutes. By actively addressing the negative impacts of overpopulated bear population and human safety, we can raise awareness about the importance of sustainable wildlife management and promote a balanced approach that considers the needs and safety of both human communities and the natural environment. On the other hand, the abandonment of traditional farming practice due to the bear-related damage can lead to the change in land use. If farmers are unable to protect their crops from bear depredation, they may give up on agricultural activities, resulting in the abandonment of fields and loss of habitat for other species. This can contribute to the decline of certain plant and animal populations that depend on these habitats. As for the impact of small game species, the overpopulation of bears can have negative consequences. The growing number of bears endangers biodiversity by depleting the food sources of other wild animals. This is evident in the increasing reliance on supplementary feeding for those species. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This was the contribution of the panel, so we can now open to have a debate also with the members of the Committee of the Regions present over here. Before I come to you, give me one more minute, because we also got a written contribution by Mr. Kompatscher from the EPP group and a representative for this event. And I have promised that I would read out, especially because those following online did not get a copy. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues in the European Committee of the Regions and in the Intergroup on Biodiversity, Hunting and Countryside, I would like to take this opportunity today to address you with some cautionary words and express my gratitude for this opportunity. The recent tragic incident of a young athlete falling victim to a bear attack in the neighboring Trentino region has deeply shaken me and challenged my optimism regarding the possibility of coexistence with certain predators in inhabited and cultivated areas. The reintroduction of large carnivores in Central Europe is not just an emotional topic, but also a significant socio-political challenge. Those who support this initiative often reside far from the affected areas, outnumbering the impacted individuals who bear the increasing negative consequences of a wildlife romanticism policy. However, an overly optimistic and romanticized perspective on this development leads to a misguided approach that poses serious problems for traditional economic activities in the Alpine region. It's not only the traditional mountain farming that suffers under the rising population pressure from bears and wolves, but also the tourism and leisure industry, which will have to struggle with these issues more and more. In recent years, these predators have expanded into areas where, in my personal belief, the possibility of coexistence is fundamentally questionable. If coexistence is to be achievable, it can only be through strict management measures that maintain the populations of large carnivores in balance with the surrounding environment. If we continue the current path without a clear change in direction, esteemed colleagues, we are unintentionally educate the predators in our meadows and forests to gradually lose their fear of humans. And that is a situation we certainly do not want to witness. Therefore, we must gather the courage to acknowledge the past mistakes and find a solution that leads to a sustainable resolution and a viable balance for the entire situation. While it was commendable decades ago to protect large predators from extinction through EU projects, we now face a different situation that requires careful consideration, even if the necessary decisions may not receive unanimous approval. Therefore, of its utmost importance that we focus on the implementation of comprehensive and effective management strategies, also on the regional level, in accordance with the principle of subsidiarity. Thank you for your attention. Arno Kompetscher. This letter to introduce the debate, but I have a first contribution from Mr. Cambetti.
Thank you, Chair. I speak in Italian.
The Habitats Directive protects large carnivores. However, taking into account the economic, social, and cultural and regional requirements in Italy, the Environment Institute tells us that for 2015 to 19, damage caused to the economy by wolves is around 10 million euros. But over the last 2 years, the situation has worsened, as the Institute says. That is because of the abnormal increase in the number of wolves, about 3,000 across Italy. There has also been a strong increase in the Alps in particular in Veneto and Trentino, two areas which have seen repopulation by carnivores which were absent for hundreds of years. In the Apennines and the northwest, bears have been around for a long time, more recently. There has been an increase of 10% a year without 100 being reached. In Veneto, after various attacks, 600 livestock have been killed, and there have been also a serious number of injuries. The attacks to humans by bears also are starting to take on concerning proportions. Last April, Andrea Papi was killed by a bear in Trentino. The attack was followed a few days later by a serious attack on another person. Bear attacks in Trentino have increased by several times, but the phenomenon is complex. There's been a phenomenal growth in certain areas, damage and attacks and social economic damage in limited mountain areas where large carnivores have not been present for a long time. Economic and social activities in marginalised areas are under threat. The loss of population in this area is already a challenge. We need to be coherent and find balance without and ensure prevention without being too ideological, to ensure that natural habitats are protected and large carnivores can exist without damaging the agricultural activities and tourism and allowing communities to thrive. Communities have been able to thrive in difficult conditions, such as in the Alps, for a long time, and now this is under threat. The concerns of people who live and work in the mountains and wish to remain there are not being taken into account. Very serious and concerning social issues are being created by the presence of large carnivores.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ciambetti. I would like, I have a couple of people who would like to intervene. I will give you the floor. I just would like you, if possible, to limit yourself to 2 minutes so that we can give everybody the opportunity to contribute. Mr. Goddard, you were the next one on my list, and then I will go to Mrs. Fernandez, and then I go to Mrs. Schouten and Mr. Zeeman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, I'd like to switch to German, if possible. Ich werde in Deutsch sprechen. Ich wollte nur ganz kurz berichten aus Bayern. Is that possible? Okay, so I have to. Okay, I stay in English and I try to do the special words. I just like to report from the Bavarian point of view, because what we tried is, since we have an increasing number of wolves, especially in Bavaria, we changed the law and we tried to have the principle of one bite is enough. So as soon as one wolf gives one bite to another animal, we want to shoot the wolf. And this is a problem because it's not, as we can see, not surely covered by the rules within the Annex 5. We've made the law, but at the same time some organizations went to court, so it's now at the court, and I just want to address to the Commission that I think the only possibility to have a clear way in dealing with the coexistence of wolves and other animals is to go from Annex 4 to Annex 5 and to have a better monitoring of the population of wolves, not a small scale one, but huge areas to get it. And we'll see now on the Bavarian side whether our law keeps or is stable against within the EU regulation. But I'd like to ask you to go from Annex 4 to Annex 5. I think this is the only proper solution.
Thank you, Mrs. Fernandez Villaña.
Thank you very much. I prefer speaking in Spanish. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to the European Parliament, and particularly to my group, Renew, in the Committee of the Regions, for having a clear position in a rather difficult time. Thank you to the Minister from Castilla y León, and Cantabria shares your position, as you know, 100%. I can be very brief, but I do just want to make a point. This possibility of modifying the Habitats Directive is on the table. It's been in force for 30 years. However, I think we have to look for the most flexible, rapid solutions possible, which will help us to look at this problem. It's quite a significant problem in Europe, particularly in Spain and in my region, Cantabria. On the 24th of November, there was a resolution from the European Parliament on protecting livestock from large carnivores. And the Commission has to act on this. On the 25th of November, there was a letter from Ursula von der Leyen to the European Parliament where she said that she would tackle this significant problem. And it has to be solved immediately with proper application of the subsidiarity principle. And that's what we are calling for in the Committee of the Regions. Regional and local authorities are fully aware that we are the best place to understand the scope of the problem. We have figures. We're all giving figures about our territories. Just at local level, we're aware of the suffering of our farmers and the impact of attacks from large carnivores, as well as the impact that it will have on the future of our regions. Our Spanish minister is preventing the autonomous regions from properly protecting themselves and ensuring this balance between livestock farming on a large scale and the wolf. In Cantabria, have asked for what the Commission President set out in her letter. We want to see proper implementation of the principle of subsidiarity. And we want to ensure that the Commission isn't placing obstacles to Member States. We want even to go further. Member States can't be obstacles, can't provide an impediment if the autonomous communities want to tackle this problem and to continue to apply our wolf management programme as we do in Cantabria. In the last 10 years, 20 years ago there were 10 attacks, but now we're seeing in 2019 we are seeing over 2,000. Another important date was the 8th of February in the Committee of the Regions where we had this debate. We have to ensure that we properly implement the principle of subsidiarity. This is one of the basic rules of the European Union, and we have to ensure proper protection from wolves. We want to see Europe and Spain change its position. I'm a livestock farmer, and this is what's happening to my animals. This is what's happened to my animals. This is what's happening now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this contribution. Mrs. Schouten, you're the next in the row.
Thank you very much, moderator. And I'm from the Netherlands, so I feel I have to be a little bit humble because we do not have the very large carnivores, but we do have wolves and we do have a lot of controversy, like in all the other member states. But the big question to me is, listening to all the debates that we are having at the moment, or the exchange of opinions and views, whose voice really counts? There is no denial that coexisting with carnivores does cause conflict. But there is also mounting evidence that carnivores, or the restoration and the re-entrance of carnivores into our member states, is also a huge, has a very positive effect on biodiversity. And there are also real threats to biodiversity, and we all of us know that. That's the big elephant in the room. Talking about big animals, there's one big elephant in the room, and that is, what are the real threats to small farmers and to biodiversities? Is that the carnivore, or are there other factors? And are we really addressing these other factors? Personally, I honestly do not believe that killing and hunting is the obvious solution for restoration of biodiversity, or restoration of biodiversity and livelihood of small farmers. And of course, please don't take me wrong, there are really troubles, and we know the pictures of sheep being killed, of people attacked, but lifting the preservations of large carnivores is not going to help us. So whose voice is going to count, and are we really in the position, and I think we are, to address the causes that are causing the conflicts for farmers and our livelihood and our biodiversity? So I have two questions, one to the platform, and Mr. Moderator, thank you for exchanging your heads so transparently. That's very helpful. So now I would like to ask you a question in your position as moderator of the platform. How does the exchange of views, of opinions, also help to restore the livelihoods of farmers, and also help to restore the position of the carnivores, so that we can continue increasing the protection of biodiversity in our member states? That's one question I have. And Madame, I hope I can't see it very, Schmiedbauer, sorry. I really liked how you ended. You said, let's start the peace talks. But I'm still not really getting the point where the peace talks, the point on what that should entail. So I hope you can enlighten us a little bit more on where we can reach each other in, perhaps, on the one hand, the protection of the carnivores, the protection of the livelihood, without killing the one or the other. Thank you.
Okay, I will first finish my round. I first have Mr. Zeman, then I go to Mr. Bieber and Mrs. Bille.
Thank you very much. I'll be short. My name is Robert Zeman. I'm from Czech Republic, and maybe a few words about our troubles or our situation with wolves. We are a bit, I can say, on the start with problems, what you mentioned here. Yeah, I'm from countryside, I'm also a small farmer, and we see that wolves are a bit spreading. I'm in South Bohemia. Okay, there is a national park of Bavaria, Národní park Šumava, and we see how difficult it is, because there is a lot of cattle, a lot of small or bigger farmers, how to find some balance. Yeah. I was asking also a few farmers before this meeting, and one very, I think, clever lady, because she's a hunter, she's a farmer, and she likes also nature, she has dogs, has told me we should much more communicate every single case about that wolves, what are in our area. We are not so overcrowded by wolves like it's at Italy or at Spain just now, but we are starting, and that problems affecting cattle, etc., are coming. But problem is that these guys are not on eco, almost conservations, people who care about nature has like more rights than others in that searching for some solutions. And we really would like maybe to add to that platform something. I'll ask you for that possibility that colleagues could come go there. And also we should think about that we are living almost at cultural area. And what you told to find balance in like a peace setup, I don't think it will be possible every time and everywhere, because it's idealistic, romantic, as was told here, but very often it's not possible. But to try to find many solutions, we should to do and do it locally, and do it not only via offices, but look at the farmers also, what their needs, etc. Yeah, but it's very difficult in real life. We all know it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bieber.
Thank you, dear moderator, and dear Jürgen, for giving me the opportunity to argue in favor of nature protection and also on the protection of large carnivores. I do not deny the problems of coexistence between large carnivores and humans, but I consider that the role of these large carnivores in preserving Europe's biodiversity is too important to abandon their protection on the European level. Many countries have already found solutions to compensate for the losses suffered, but also to find preventive measures. Let me quote the Greek experience. I had been a member of the Natura 2000 award jury, and we had an application from Greek solutions to tackle the problem of brown bears. And my country also had started, before the wolf appeared in my country, started communication and information, sensibilization of the large public and stakeholders, and installed compensation measures. So the 2 or 3 attacks on sheep from wolves had very swiftly been accepted, because all the farmers had been adequately compensated for their losses. So I'm arguing that a strict protection of large carnivores, combined with a system of prevention, fair compensation and communication between experts and stakeholders, that's the best solution to consider peaceful coexistence. So I really approve the approach of the platform, as you mentioned just before, and I really deplore, and all my compassion goes to the family, to the jogger who had been attacked and killed by a bear. But let me quote also the example of the German nature filmmaker Andreas Kieling, who had been severely attacked and nearly was killed by a bear, but he clearly said, "It's not the bear's fault, it was my fault that I had been attacked." So I want to say with that, we have to be to have a certain understanding for living with large carnivores that are dangerous animals. So let's try to tackle the problem of dealing with large carnivores, because we can't also not forbid cars. They are also killing people. And we try to avoid all these situations. So let's try to avoid conflict situations with large carnivores. And I think that the Habitat Directive gives us quite a lot of possibilities to take action. And you find quite a lot of instruments in the Habitat Directive to react to these problems. I think that scientific-based management plans are allowed by the Habitat Directive, and if national governments install compensation measures, we can find solutions and possibilities to live together with large carnivores. I don't like pictures where sheep or livestock is killed or just half killed by wolf or bear. But I think we have to live with that, because bears and large carnivores are an important link in the net of biodiversity. And if we take this link out of the net will not be so much at ease to fulfill all the ecosystem services that biodiversity does give to us. So I think that we should be aware that also we as Europeans should live with large carnivores. We can't see or ask the African countries not to kill the big fives, because they are more dangerous to humans than our large carnivores. So I'm advocated in finding, and I had the feeling that everyone is open to find solutions, discussions, without opening the Annex 4 or without diluting the habitat directives. I think we have already all the instruments in the habitat directive to react, and I'm not against removing, to take a diplomatic word, removing animals that cause problems. But if we have scientific-based management plans, I think we could do that without any problem. Thanks.
Mrs. Bille, and then I come to Mr. Lostrand, and then I will come back to the panel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the chance. Now I can make it short, because I agree very much with Mr. Beaver in his approach to this. I will make a few additions to that, though, because I like to talk about peace talks, and I like to talk about dialogue, but I also don't like being called a romantic fool because I talk about biodiversity. And whenever we talk about biodiversity or climate crisis, we are always called a little bit romantic, and this cannot be achieved. So, so that's not really adding to the peace talks if we have to face that every time we talk about biodiversity. I have full respect, like you said, for the farmers in these areas. And I live in a rural area myself, and we talk about wolves. They are moving into Denmark, so I will be as humble as Mrs. Schouten in that. But we do know about these discussions. I like what Mr. Tack said about that we are working within the framework. We are not opening the habitat directives. We are within this framework. This is existing, and that is what's helping us. It's because we worry a lot about the talks that are now about opening the files. I think, again, that we should work a lot more with the instruments that we already have compensation. It is quite natural that we compensate farmers when other natural disasters hit them, like if you have the avian influenza, we have African swine fever and other things that comes from nature and kills our animals. So we compensate farmers for that, and I think this is the same way we should start thinking about this. And then, of course, use all the other measures we have for protecting our livestock. There are technical ways, there are chips in your livestock, there are fences and other ways. So I think we should talk a lot more about the possibilities that we have to make the constructive living together. So, as for respect for the fear for the large carnivores, as much respect for the crisis in biodiversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lostrand.
First, thank you for organizing this important discussion, and thank you for the work that has been done in this area. I'm also thankful for being invited to this discussion, as I am from Sweden, a country with a large stock of carnivores. As you heard, we have wolverine, bear, lynx, and nowadays even more than 400 wolves in Sweden. The wolves are mostly in the southern half of the country, as it is impossible to combine wolf with the reindeer industry that is held in the mountain areas in the northern parts of Sweden. However, wolves are not familiar with human borders, and they search new hunting areas, and because of that, the problem with wolves coming up to the northern half of the country with major problems for the reindeer husbandry has increased. Sweden is also a country with a lot of other wild animals, such as deer, moose, crown deer, and wild boar. Out of a population of 10.4 million people are 300,000 Swedes registered hunters that hunt each year. For example, in each year around 80,000 mooses and close to 700 bears are hunted in Sweden each year. A lot of the hunting is made with the help of dogs that are trained to find moose and bark against them until they stand still so the hunter can take the shot. The last 4 years have more than 100 attacks from wolves on hunters' dogs been reported, many times with a deadly outcome. We then must understand that these dogs are loved family members, trained since they were puppies, with years of effort to make the dogs valuable hunters that helps us to control the amount of moose that is needed to protect the forest and to make the roads safe for driving. We have more than 6,000 traffic incidents, including wild animals, each year. Without the hunting, had the numbers been much higher. The value of a wolf-killed dog is, with other words, very hard to put a price on. The emotional value for a wolf-killed dog is huge for the hunter, and it's easy to understand that these incidents many times turn out to hate against wolves. Even if we have incidents with bears each year, it's not comparable with the damage made by wolves. Since the number of wolves have raised from a handful in the 90s to over 450 animals over the last 30 years, are the problems raising. Even if we build fences to protect tame animals such as sheep, is it impossible to build fences against the threat and stress that animals and farmers feel when the number of wolves raise in the nearby area? Of course, we need to keep a healthy population of wolves even in Sweden, but it is impossible to combine wolves with reindeer husbandry and child shepherds. With this said, I think it is most important that the decisions on numbers of carnivores are taken as close to the citizens as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now first going to return to the panel, and then we have a representative of one of our stakeholders. I will also go over there, but I will start with Mr. Quiñones.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Well, just very briefly, a few points. The best animals in the mountains are sheep, goats, cattle. If we are going to try to protect mountainous areas, and this is how we have to do it. Also, humans are the best placed to protect rural areas. We don't want to see them removed from there. We have to protect our mountainous areas. We are talking about sixth generation farmers. The worst thing that can happen is for people to abandon rural areas. Now, Europe, when it comes to food, is always in favour of quality food. We're talking here about livestock that's in the mountains. They're not stuck in stables. We're talking about the highest possible quality of milk and meat. Should we not protect this? Yes. Thirdly, we shouldn't forget we've just been through a COVID pandemic. There we were all stuck in our houses. But farmers had to continue to work to feed our populations. This is a question of justice now. We have to help them. Madam Schouten was talking about peace. This peace isn't just absence of conflict. We also have to have balance and equilibrium. And we're not seeing that. In rural areas, we don't have equilibrium and we don't have justice.
Mrs. Schmidbauer.
So thank you so much. We'll come back to the question what peace talks means to me. Is, for example, that NGOs and the Commission take the country people seriously, no more. And this isn't happening at the moment. Solutions aren't working. So doing nothing and keep on going like we have is no option for us. But this is the way the Commission and many NGOs want to go. This is a position which will not help us to conflict this resolution. And to the biodiversity defenders, Mr. Beaver and Ms. Bill. Mr. Beaver, I have a question. Where do you live? Where do you live? Yes. Luxembourg. It's in a city, no rural area or in a region. This is quite different, and I want all of you invite you to Austria, for example, or other member states and regions. Because Ms. Bill also said, when we are talking about biodiversity, we farmers live for biodiversity. It's a passion for us. And I do not understand one thing. Why are wolves more important to you than other protected species and habitats. This is the conflict in our discussion. The wolf is the most important point for many of you, but not the regions, not the farmers. And I saw Ms. Fernandez, the picture of your animals and how emotional it is for you at the moment. She had to pick the animals up. Please think about it. And only one sentence last for Austria. The last attacks we had were next to the houses from the farmers. I'm talking about 100, 150 meters. And we have families where the children aren't allowed to go out in the forestry playing. Such they did it before, and it was quite normally. This is a situation we have to discuss and respect. Thank you.
Mrs. Gomez.
Thank you very much. I listened to all of you, and of course it's difficult to have a balance because some of you are against, some of you are in favor. What we have to ask and what we have to know is if we have now the right measures to answer this problem. Do we have the right measures? Is it possible to have another measures to protect large carnivores and the other animals? It's the question. And I think we have to work on it. And as President of NAT Commission, I assure you that we will work and we will discuss this matter all together, and I hope we find the way to protect everybody, the animals, the large carnivores, and naturally the habitats, because it's very, very important. But I understand people who lose his animals anytime, many times, because in the north of Portugal it happens too. And our government pays the price, of course, but it's not enough. And it's very difficult because people are always thinking what is going to happen tomorrow. What is going to happen tomorrow? And how to fight this problem. Okay, I think we have to do this balance, to find this balance for the future of nature, of large carnivores, and for the future of the habitats. And of course, all together, we will find a way, the right way. Thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Boboli, you still want?
Yes, thank you. I would like to, what I have to say to reach the government of Romania and the media in Romania. I will speak in Romanian, Channel 4. Please, the headphones. Take it. Este foarte important.
It's very important for us to see.
În privința derogărilor, pentru că momentan această prevedere în România nu funcționează. Chiar dacă s-a încercat să fie realizat un cadru legal, dar nu funcționează. Nu funcționează. Este lege, dar nu funcționează. Pentru că vânătoarea atât de tare a fost stigmatizată în ultimele 10 ani, politicienii atât de tare au fost atacați de ONG-uri, încât îi e frică tuturor să facă ceva. Așadar, mai bine fac ca struțul. Deci nu merge derogarea. Deci nu funcționează articolul 16. Și aș spune și de ce. Și dacă ne uităm la Curtea de Conturi al Uniunii Europene, dacă citiți controlul făcut pentru programul LIFE, o să vedeți că chiar și Curtea de Conturi al Uniunii Europene a zis prea multe milioane, sute de milioane de euro au fost cheltuiți pentru niște programe. Din acele programe s-au făcut foarte multe studii și foarte multe campanii. Din aceste campanii s-a reușit stigmatizarea. Și de aceea nici politicienii, nici vânătorii nu vreau să facă nimic. Lasă așa cum este, e mai bine, nu vor denunțuri, nu vor implicare, nu vor să apară în mass media. Și vă spun și cu cifre. Avem acum, cu derogare și intervenție, cadrul legal în România de 1 an și jumătate. Au fost de 600 de ori în județul meu urși în curțile grădiniței, spitalului, chiar și în sediul poliției, la internate, magazine, case. Deci nu vorbim de păduri. De 600 de ori. Și frica, numai 9 din acestea au fost extrase. Restul a revenit și revine și astăzi. Deci nu merge acest lucru nici cu compensația, e prea mare birocrația și aici are o mare... Asta știu, am văzut. Guvernul României ar putea rezolva, dar nu îi e frică. E sub presiune. De aceea eu cred că Uniunea Europeană ar trebui să fie mult mai atent la ce se întâmplă. Și chiar este foarte bine că în cadrul Large Carnivore Platforms am reușit să studiem încă one sentences. Mulți s-a văzut problema care este. Sunt soluții peste tot și finanțări pentru populație în dispariție. Dar nu este regulament și nu este finanțare când este suprapopulație. Deci nu există și de aceea aș dori, domnule Biver, să avem o opinie, să ne axăm și pe acest, unde este suprapopulație, unde urșii sunt în școală. Și încă un lucru, și închid, în Grecia sunt 150 de urși. În județul meu sunt 2500. E un județ de 6000 de kilometri. Grecia este un stat mare. Deci, credeți-mă, e o problemă. Și eu chiar vă rog să veniți în județul Harghita. Mulțumesc.
Thank you very much. I will give...
Mulțumesc. Am să dau acum ocazia.
Give a contribution and then I will wrap up this session.
Thank you very much. Sabrina Dietz from FACE, the European Federation for Hunting and Conservation. I think, first of all, we need to clarify that we are not talking about opening the Habitats Directive. So the Habitats Directive is fit for purpose. It's really about using Article 19 to change the protection status in line with scientific and technical progress, having in mind that the annexes of the Habitats Directive are already 30 years old. So now it's really timely to reassess the protection status, especially of the wolf in Europe. And I think another thing that is important to have in mind, moving the wolf from Annex 4 to Annex 5 would not mean to lose the protection status at all. So the wolf would be still protected in a way. It just gives more flexibility to the people on the ground, which is needed to really improve the coexistence now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of this session. The session was clearly too short to have that serious peace talks we would like to have. I have to say, if I would speak as Secretary General of the European Landowners Organization, then I have to say also our members are very much concerned about large carnivores. If I take my position as a chair of the European Large Carnivore Platform, then I have to say in a number of cases we do find solutions. I also have to admit we do not always find solutions. If I take my different hats and I mix, let's say, what I've learned as a chair of the platform and what I've learned today, first of all, let's say, the people around the table here are not much different than the people in the street. It seems that this is a topic where either you are pro or you're against. There seems not to be a middle way. And that's the reason that we are most probably speaking about peace talks, because it's not something on which you have a moderate opinion, it's always going to the extremes. I've heard, Mrs. Schmidbader, from you, take people seriously. And then I'm speaking again out of what I've learned from the platform. What we often see is that if there is a problem, at the local level, the regional level, the national level, then, and you start complaining, then the answer is, we are not able to do anything because of Brussels, because of the European Commission. If the same people go to the European Commission, then they say, hey, wait. There is a possibility for a derogation, so please go back to your member state. And so actually quite often people are just moving forward between two opinions, pinpointing to each other. If you say take people seriously and we take them also respectfully, then at a certain moment I think the Commission has to act in one or the other way. I'm still going to give you one story about the Swedish regional meeting which we had in January, and where there was a scientist who said, okay, there have been in Sweden, in that region, 19 attacks on hunting dogs, and there were in total 300,000 hunting dogs. What is the problem? I have answered to that in a way that had nothing to do with wolves, with large carnivores. And I said, at that moment my daughter was pregnant. My first grandson is born 2 weeks ago. But when my wife knew that my eldest daughter was pregnant, the first thing she said to me is, we have to go to buy a new car. And I said, why? Well, because of the risk that something is going to happen with a little baby. The fact that we chose a Volvo was very good because we were in Sweden when I told that story. But we bought a Volvo of, I'm afraid, more than 50,000 euros. The chance that my child is going to have an accident and dies in that car is 0. And let's say we measured it, there are 16 zeros after the comma. So the risk is extremely small. But even then we made an investment of more than 50,000 euros for something which is most probably not going to happen. That's the element of fear. And I'm a scientist, but we can do science as much as we want. We can have discussions as much as we want, but if fear is involved, things are becoming very emotional. And so I do think we need the peace talks. We need to talk. We have to talk all together, because we are dealing with something which we cannot capture only in figures. I would like to thank you. I hope that there is an opportunity to have this discussion ongoing, because, let's say, it remains a discussion. It remains two very different views, and so we will need those talks. Thank you.
Yes.